my name's Shamila. I'm one of the Look mentors. I've got Leber congenital amaurosis eye condition, LCA, and my dad and sisters also have the same condition. And I've started losing my sight. It's a genetic condition that I was born with, obviously, but started losing more significantly when I was a teenager, going on. So yeah, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at Retina UK?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Matthew Carr. I'm an information support manager with Retina UK. I've been with the charity for coming for 3 years now. So started when it was RP Fighting Blindness, and then when we rebranded to Retina UK as we are now. So I've got retinitis pigmentosa, and I've also got a condition called keratoconus. So the RP, retinitis pigmentosa, runs in my family as well, back 2 generations that we know of. Diagnosed as a child, but didn't really cause any great issues until I was in my mid-20s. And it was a traumatic incident that kicked it all off for me. And since then, it's slowly declined. But you stay positive, you carry on and get on with life the best you can.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks obviously for joining us today to tell us a little bit more about Retina UK and the annual virtual conference. So can you, obviously you've said a little bit about your what your role is, but can you tell us a little bit more about Retina UK as an organisation and what your specific role within the organisation is?
Yeah, of course. So Retina UK this year is 45 years old. Started by Linda Cantor, who has retinitis pigmentosa. She couldn't find any information back then. Nobody really knew much about the condition. So she set up what was the British Retinitis Pigmentosa Society, along with Professor John Marshall. And they're both still very much involved in the charity as trustees. So the charity has 2 kind of arms to it, if you like. One is funding for medical research, looking for different treatments and the research into inherited retinal conditions. And the other side of things is information support, which is where I work. So historically, RP was seen as as a specific condition, but we now know that it's a host of different conditions. So as an organisation, we now provide information support for people with inherited retinal dystrophy. So it could be Leber's congenital amaurosis, choroideremia, a chromatopsia, classic RP, Usher syndrome. There are many different conditions that we can provide information and support for. So the charity, as I say, we fund medical research. So far we've invested £16.5 million into looking for cures, treatments, and things like that. We were part of the team who managed to get the Luxturna treatment for people with Leber's congenital amaurosis through the NICE approval process a couple of years ago, which is the first ever treatment, which is absolutely fantastic.
That was a huge landmark.
It absolutely was. It was huge. And then so my side of the charity is the information support. So we do a host of different things. So we manage the Facebook pages. We have information days where people can come along and find out about the conditions, the different research that's happening, meet other people, speak to like-minded people. We have guest speakers in, looking at different technologies and things. Obviously, this is all pre the pandemic and such like, but we're very much looking forward to getting back face to face. We do have now peer support groups, which are currently running virtually as well. But again, looking forward to getting those more face to face. The conferences, which obviously we'll touch a bit more on our conferences. And the other big thing we have is our helpline service. So we have both a telephone and an email helpline. And the unique thing with our helpline is both of those are staffed by volunteers who actually have one of our conditions, so they can really empathise with people who come through, whether they need a listening ear, whether they're looking for some practical solutions to a problem. Everyone who works on that service can really understand what that person is going through. And it's not just for people with the conditions either. It could be for literally anybody. It could be for an employer, it could be for a partner, a family member, silence professionals. Literally anybody can use their services.
Yeah, I did read that on one of your recent newsletters, actually, about the fact that there's visually impaired people on the helplines, which is brilliant.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously I mentioned that I started losing more of my sight significantly when I was a teenager. I would go to my annual appointments, but I didn't really want to know much about my eye condition. I just really was more interested in like how and when it was going to get worse. For a long time, I thought nobody could see in the dark because I had like night blindness. Do you think it's important for young VI people to understand a little bit more of how their sight works? And as an organisation, do you have any resources or anything that you do specifically to target younger people?
So I think, yes, I think it is important for people to kind of understand the nature of the condition. The caveat to that is it depends on the age of the person getting that diagnosis. I think it's really important to remember that everybody is an individual. Some people may have a family history. Some people may have no family history of it, of whatever the condition may be. So it can be a bit of a difficult question to answer, but my personal view is, knowing what I know now, I've kind of gone through, certainly the first couple of phases of my sight loss journey. But then I was saying that I've only recently really actually understood what the condition is and what the research into my particular RP is. And I'm 38 now, so that's it's a really difficult one. But I think if anybody can really get to grips and understand what that condition means for them, it's always going to be a bonus.
Yeah,
because things just move so quickly.
And obviously, the fact that you said you're doing so much more different retinal eye conditions, not just RP. At first I was even diagnosed with RP. It wasn't till my early 20s that then they did some more testing and then said it was LCA because they are so similar. As well. So just going back on that point.
Yeah, because a lot of the inherited retinal conditions, they start off so very similar, as you mentioned before about night blindness. But it very much depends on the gene that causes the condition, and obviously how it manifests itself as the condition progresses. Some conditions some people may lose their sight a lot quicker than others. Then some people, it may be a very, very gradual decline in vision. Some people may lose all of their vision. Some people may stop at a certain point. It really is. There are so many different anomalies to these conditions. It's almost impossible to predict how it's going to affect each person.
So do you have any specific resources that are more targeted towards younger people in the way that it's written, the way it's put across to people?
Yeah, so we don't actually have specific materials for young people. What we would tend to do is we as an organisation can't know everything. We're still a relatively small organisation, although we kind of have quite a big weight and a responsibility on our shoulders. So the way that we overcome that is by working with organisations such as Look, with Usher Kids UK, for example. We work closely with the Macular Society. For example, Stargardt's affects both the macula and the retina.
Yeah.
So we work with a lot of partners to be able to get the right information for people who are looking for it. As I mentioned earlier on our helpline, the volunteers that we have, they're from a broad range of backgrounds. So we have people who work in education, we have people who work in social care, in health, in industry. We have a massive range of knowledge there as well. So we can certainly pick the people who are best placed to provide some of that everyday advice. But as I say, we do work very closely with the likes of Look to be able to target some of that information and get the language right.
Yeah, brilliant. So if someone wanted to know a little bit more about their retinal, their eye condition, is there resources on your website that you can actually learn a little bit more about specific eye conditions?
Yeah, absolutely. So our website has information on a whole host of different conditions, on genetics, on the research, practical everyday skills. The website is constantly evolving with new information. We're keeping up to date. So it's always a good place to go and have a look at.
This next question might be a little bit broad, but just a little bit of a reflection on my own experience. So growing up, I was the first one from my siblings to have the eye condition. So there was a lot of they would tell me a lot of stuff in terms of school, how things were what I needed to really learn to equip myself for the future, knowing, how the eye condition is likely to affect me. But because I didn't really have anything before me to the experience of that, like an older sibling, I just wasn't as interested. They told me it was going to get worse, but it just never feels real, never feels like it's going to happen to you. So I didn't really engage in learning a lot of skills like the cane or braille. They can't really, obviously, professionals or even medical professionals or teaching professionals, they can't really tell you definitive stuff because it's all individual. Like you said, everyone's progression is going to be so personal to them and their condition. At the time, not really knowing much about how things are definitively gonna change, is there much support that as an organization you can or do provide in terms of, I know you said you've got the peer support, but any other groups that you run?
Yeah, so we're able to provide a lot of information and support. One thing we don't do is give advice, purely because advice is very much a personal thing again. So what would work for me isn't necessarily going to be the right thing for the next person. But as I say, we certainly can look to tailor that the information by speaking with partners. So as I said before, we're not the experts in everything. We certainly know our eye conditions, and we certainly know the research and where things are going from in that respect. We have people with lived experience who we can call on, but we're not, for example, educational specialists. So we would seek to find that kind of information to make sure that we were given the best information that we can. So with learning everyday skills, again, as I said at the very beginning, it very much depends on the mindset of people. So me personally, I think I was much like you when I was first diagnosed as a child. We never knew how quickly things were going to be progressing, and to be honest, even into my 20s, there was no issue there whatsoever. I was even in the police service. I was a traffic officer, so I was driving fast cars.
Yeah.
Without a care in the world, until one day things came crashing down, and then you have to go and learn after that. So you speaking with your rehabilitation specialists. I think it's knowing in your own mind when the right time is to look to get that that advice and support from certain specialists, either through your local authority, through guide dogs who do the mobility training, for example. Do I need a guide dog at this point? There are so many different people that you can kind of speak to get that, but knowledge is power at the end of the day. So the more knowledge you can get, I think the better it's going to stand anybody.
I think the key thing you just mentioned is the whole time thing, isn't it? When you're ready to get that information and that support more, it can't really be pushed on you before that. You're not really going to engage with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if I was to say to somebody, sit down in front of somebody and say, right, you must do this, this, and this. If they're not ready to do that, then it could also have a negative effect. If people are pushed in the right in one direction and they're not ready to take that step, it can certainly be more detrimental. So yeah, it's very much knowing and being comfortable in yourself to be able to ask for help in the first instance, and to be able to say that I'm struggling, and that's perfectly okay to do that.
Yeah. And just another reflection on my own experience, but also speaking to many friends and other visually impaired people as well. But a lot of visually impaired people at a young age are told not to come back to our clinics, like to get discharged, and told, just come back if you notice something has changed with your vision. My hospital team tried to do that when I was a teenager. Luckily, my parents kind of pushed not to get discharged, and I've been seeing the same consultant since I was 16. So that's been really useful. Even though they can't do much for my eye condition, it's still good to kind of stay in the loop if there's any research projects or genetic testing or anything like that can be going on. But often, once you're discharged, it's so hard to get back into the system, to get that support again, and you kind of don't really know what you're waiting for unless it drastically changes your eye condition. But listening to that, what do you think about that, and have you got any advice to someone who's kind of experiencing that?
Yeah, we hear this an awful lot, where people are told there's nothing more we can do. Your sight loss is going to progress, and go home and come back if you find you have any further problems. Inevitably, that day will come, and it can be quite difficult to get back into that system. So I think if anybody is going to the hospitals, say, no, I want to still see you, even if it's in 12 months or 2 years, they'll certainly diarise that just to keep you going on, just to have images done and just to see how things are progressing. We all know it's really important to have regular eye health checks. It's not just about what you can see, but optometrists on the high street, when you go to the opticians, can see things that obviously you wouldn't necessarily know was there. So, for example, it could be the starts of cataracts, for example, or other things. So that's really important to kind of carry on doing, even if you are at a hospital. Do try and keep in hospital system. If you have been discharged, you can get back into the system by going and speaking to your GP and asking for a referral back into that clinic. It doesn't take a huge amount of time for that to happen, but he says that it could be 6 months, for example, or maybe a little bit longer, but it certainly will get you back into the system. But try and stay in the system for as long as you can. If you're not in the system and you don't want to go back into the hospitals, keep in contact with different sight loss organisations such as Look, Retina UK. Stay on the mailing lists. Developments are happening all the time. I mean, the Luxturna treatment for Leber's congenital amaurosis, nobody really knew much about it until it was literally there. So if you didn't actually know that research was going on, then you wouldn't necessarily have an idea that is potentially coming around the corner. One of the key things that we're driving this year is around genetic testing, and you can speak with a genetic counsellor at the hospital and have a genetic test done. By finding out what your genetic diagnosis is at that point, means that you can then start looking at what the research is into a specific gene. If your faulty gene is identified, you can then really start to focus your efforts on seeing what research and things are in that area. But again, it does help to be in a hospital system for that to happen.
You know, that perfectly goes into my next question, which is about genetic counselling. But just before that, I just wanted to comment on about being in the hospital system. My experience personally has been quite positive, with being able to see the same consultant or someone from his team at least once a year. Well, not more than that, once a year, maybe every 18 months. I've been able to kind of take part in certain research projects that they've had going. So the last one I went to, the appointment I went to, they were taking blood tests and putting like a database for people to study a little bit more on. So it's just really useful to kind of just be there so you can be part of that research and
absolutely, that's awesome.
Help it along. Yeah. So yeah, as you started mentioning genetic counselling, can you tell us a little bit more about genetic testing, genetic counselling? I mean, I personally I don't really know much about it. I couldn't believe that it was, or thought it was something that you looked at when you're thinking of having a family. But why could it be important for families and people with visual impairments to know about?
Absolutely. So yeah, genetic counselling is typically done in a hospital setting. It's certainly not medical. You speak with a genetic counsellor. They will go through your family history to see who has the condition, so they can work out what inheritance pattern you may have. So some are, you take a gene from the father, some is from a mother, some is from both, some it could be, as I say, you could be first in line in the family history to be diagnosed with the condition. So yes, historically it would have been for people who were looking to start a family to see what the chances may be of passing on that a condition to a child. But it's even more important now because we understand that you could have 10 people in a room with the same diagnosis. So they have RP, for example. But those 10 people could have a completely different faulty gene. So my particular gene is RDH12. Somebody else could have RP1, for example. So the benefit of knowing your genetic diagnosis rather than your clinical diagnosis is that quite often when they're looking to develop a treatment, it's hinged very much on the gene and whether you have one or two faulty copies of that gene. So that is absolutely key to looking at clinical trials and things that you may be able to take part in the future for a specific potential treatment. I know we'll talk a little bit about the conference shortly, but one of the big things that we have launching at conference this year is a new website, a new tool called Unlock Genetics. I'm not going to give too much away, but it is a website and it literally goes through this whole process, the pros, the cons, how to find out more. So, I'll put in an early plug for, come along to the conference and find out a little bit more about that. But it is absolutely really, really important for everyone to know their genetic diagnosis.
It's interesting. I've never met another RDH12 because that's my gene as well.
There you go. So the funny thing with RDH12 is, so I didn't know about my actual genetic diagnosis when I started with Retina UK. I was still waiting for my diagnosis to come back from the 100,000 genome project from back in the early noughties, and I was always under the impression that RDH12 really targeted younger people, and it was a very, very rapid onset of sight loss. Whereas me, and in fact my family, we've now had it confirmed, the other two generations in my family have also got RDH12, and it's not really affected anybody until much later on in life. So I understand now that a lot of other people with that specific gene as well, it's affecting people at different times. So a lot of the medics are learning more about these genes as we go along. So yeah, welcome to the club.
Yeah, that was my impression as well, that it literally is early onset and quite progressive really quickly. But yeah, that's interesting. So tell us about the annual virtual conference, and what can we expect and what benefits can people have from attending it?
Okay, so this is our first ever virtual conference. As I say, the charity has been going for 45 years. This will be our 44th conference because we didn't have one last year due to the pandemic. And so we've decided this year we can't not interact with our community in this way. So we've decided to have a virtual conference. So it's on Saturday, the 17th of April. It's free to attend. Anybody can come along. Starts at 10 o'clock in the morning and goes through till 2:45, after which time we'll have our annual general meeting. We have a packed out lineup. I've already said that we've got our Unlock Genetics launch. There will be lots of information about the latest in the genetic research that's happening. We have a genetic counsellor coming along to talk about how important it is to get your genetic diagnosis and what that process looks like. We have got a really, really good session on the other research that's going on. So not necessarily about the genetics, but a little bit wider within the field. And we've got a really, really unique session where we have people from industry. So we have people from the pharmaceutical companies. We have representatives from technology companies who are coming along. So they will answer questions specific to kind of the areas that we're looking at. So the pharmaceutical companies play a pivotal role in getting these treatments and things out. And it's not very often people from our community are able to ask some questions, some difficult questions sometimes. So we've got representatives from a few companies coming along to answer some questions as well.
Sounds great. So how can you get more information and sign up?
Great. So we will always direct people to our website. So that's www.retinauk.org.uk. And as soon as you land on the page, the first thing you'll see at the very top is our annual conference. Literally click on there and you can register, and we'll send all the information out. It's simply a click link, which will take you onto the conference on the day. You can ask questions in advance. So if you have a look at the program, which is on the website, you can submit your questions in advance. You can submit questions on the day, either via phone or via email or an online chat function. So yeah, get involved, absolutely get involved. I will put another little bit of a plug in as well for Friday, the 16th of April, which is our professionals conference. Again, it's completely open to anybody who wants to join. Again, the big emphasis there is on genetics and supporting people with their with mental health. So people start us on their mental health. So 2 conferences over those 2 days, and all the information can be found on our website. So if you're not able to access the website and you want to attend, if you can also phone our office and they will get you all booked on, and you can call those guys on 01280 821 334. And again, the website retinauk.org.uk.
Fantastic. And you have a regular newsletter that goes out as well, don't you?
We do, yeah. We do a bi-monthly email newsletter, just with the latest in our peer support groups, any meetings, bits and pieces like that are going on. Obviously, the conference gets a big mention, and 3 times a year we have our big newsletters, bit like a magazine, which we can either email out to you or post out to you. This is all completely free of charge. And again, you can find details either on the website or by calling the team in the office.
Yeah, brilliant. So anyone who attends can keep in touch with Retina UK's goings on afterwards as well. So brilliant. Thank you, Matt, for talking to me today, telling us more about your organisation and how you support people and the annual conference. So I'm going to book onto it after this.
Excellent.
So yeah, thank you.